It's insane how illegal this little device, this thermal detonator, should have been. You see this and you probably think, oh, it's just a grenade. I mean, yeah, it should be outlawed for civilian use. Well, not quite. We'll go into all that and more in today's video. Hey guys, this is Justin. Hello and welcome to another video. Hope everyone is having a great day. So we're nearing our end of Shadows of the Empire related coverage. For those who haven't been tuning in, for the past couple of weeks, we've been picking apart some of the more interesting aspects of the novel and multimedia project. Today we'll be looking specifically at thermal detonators. Shadows of the Empire does a lot to try to bridge the connection between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Everything from how Luke built his new lightsaber, to how Leia acquired her bounty hunter outfit, to how she even acquired the single thermal detonator she used to threaten Jabba the Hutt, and that in particular is a somewhat amusing story. We've been talking a lot about how the Shadows of the Empire novel differs from the Shadows of the Empire video game, which does portray the same events, although from a very different perspective. The headcanon that I've been using and that I think works really nicely is that the video game is essentially Dash Rendar's retelling of the story afterwards, basically boasting so that everything that happens he did by himself. No, it wasn't Darth Vader and his Super Star Destroyer which blew up Shizor's skyhook. I literally flew in it and destroyed it with my freighter, kind of like the second Death Star. Oh, and speaking of, no, Luke didn't help steal the second Death Star plans. I went in the Serpoza myself and stole it single-handedly. He was outside in his X-Wing. I even fought a cool killer robot to do so. I bring this up because there's one segment which differs really significantly in the game and novel and is relevant to the point of thermal detonators. So in the game, while Lando, Chewie, and Luke are off rescuing Leia from Shizor's palace, Dash Rendar also breaks in through the sewers single-handedly, and while in the palace creating a distraction, manages to plant a series of bombs which not only destroys Shizor's palace, but also the Skyhook's turbolift connection to the ground, because yes, the Skyhook is a space station, but it's also kind of like a space elevator tethered to the ground. Anyway, Dash manages to plant pulse bombs, he destroys the tether, and also, again, has to fight another giant robot. Okay, we haven't gotten to thermal detonators yet, I get it. Let's move over now to the novel, because things are very different there. In the novel, Lando, Luke, Chewbacca, and Dash, alongside a nerd who Dash ends up shooting, sneak through the sewers into Shizor's palace, and they're basically hunted down and cornered by security and Shizor himself. However, they have an ace up their sleeve, or rather several aces, thermal detonators, one of which Leia actually grabbed thinking it might be useful for a future situation, and that's what we see in Return of the Jedi. Either way, during the standoff, the thermal detonator is treated more like a small nuclear bomb than a grenade. Well, not more like that. It is, according to the book, a bomb which uses a small thermonuclear fusion reaction. The device is so powerful that when Luke pulls it out and states this is a Class A thermal detonator, Shizor recognizes that the potential detonation would be destructive enough to take out several stories of the building, which would in turn cause the entire palace to collapse. This is a building probably over a kilometer tall. A single thermal detonator is thought to be enough to take it all out. What's crazy is that Luke and Lando were able to basically buy this off the streets of Coruscant before going on the mission. So how the Empire didn't have a tighter control on these small nuclear bombs going around on Coruscant, I mean, who knows? Anyway, Shizor actually got to test out his hypothesis regarding the thermal detonator's destructive potential. The novel explains that detonators have two blast modes. For one, you can use them with a dead man switch. That's what you see Leia use in Return of the Jedi. Basically, you depress the button, and if the user's finger comes off before it's deactivated, it explodes. You've probably heard of a dead man switch before, but of course, one of the purposes of such a thing is this exact scenario. Shoot me? Well, you're going out too. You can't run far enough away to survive this explosion. The other way you can use the detonator is on a timer. You activate it. The standard setting was for 5 minutes, but you could change it before throwing or placing the device. Notice the thermal detonator does not have a grenade-like mode where you pull a pin, set a very short timer, and it explodes shortly after you throw it. That's because doing such a thing would be fatal to the user. The explosion is just too big. You'd be better off just suicide bombing yourself with the dead man switch. Either way, Lando, classic Lando, decides basically during the standoff to set the timer on one of his thermal detonators, and he throws it down what I imagine in my mind's eye to be a garbage chute. I think that's what it is. And the entire building has to be evacuated. Now, I'm sure a grenade in a modern skyscraper would be bad, but this is Shizor's armored palace on Imperial Center, what they called Coruscant at the time, and it does end up being fully destroyed by a single thermal detonator. Kind of puts the entire Jabba situation into a different perspective. But after reading the novel, I was sort of curious about how thermal detonators were generally portrayed. Was I wrong in thinking that seems wildly out of power with at least what I expected? I mean, I know you can use thermal detonators in KOTOR, and they're kind of just like grenades. So I went back to the original Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology from the 90s, and it explains that thermal detonators were strictly regulated, which is good, but that while they looked like simple grenades, they used synthetic explosive material known as beradium. The scale of the weapon, however, is pulled back somewhat, saying that a single blast can disintegrate up to 2 meters of permacrete, but also pointing out that some criminals have custom-built detonators with enough beradium to create 100-meter blast spheres, which is terrifying in a grenade. What's interesting is that unlike traditional grenades, thermal detonators don't actually rely on concussive blasts or shrapnel to damage enemies, because the thermal detonator vaporizes everything in the vicinity. There's no shrapnel, everything just disappears. That also makes them a little safer if you are outside the immediate blast range. The new Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology changes this slightly, saying that most thermal detonators can destroy everything within a 20-meter radius, which I guess could be enough to pancake a building based on collapsing floors, but also that there were more powerful and less powerful variants. Given that Luke does refer specifically to the type of thermal detonator he has, I guess it makes sense that Shizor was scared out of his mind. You know what's wild though? Clones typically carried 2 of these into combat at all times, which is kind of wild given the fact that both the new and old Essential Guide to Weapons and Technology focus on the volatility of thermal detonators, how given the beradium was only separated by a thin bit of metal, dropping the grenade or jostling it could cause it to explode. You can just imagine a Venator going up after one thermal detonator accidentally gets knocked around in someone's locker and sets off the rest of them. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's anything else you'd like me to cover before I move on from Shadows of the Empire, please let me know. Until then, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.